Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is ADC Arteza and welcome back to another live tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to draw shadows and how to effectively figure out where shadows should go, because I see this as a big problem for many people. I do see it in my comment sections quite a lot. How do I do shadows and where to put them? So what we're going to do with this video is, first things first, I'm going to do a quick version of Goku. It's not going to be the best drawing you've ever seen, but I'm just going to do a quick version of Goku, and then we're going to do a full live tutorial showcasing exactly how we figure out where those shadows go, where to do them, and how to do them. Okay, so yeah, I'll see you in a few moments. Enjoy. Okay guys, so here it is, we have our Goku image. Now, I should mention that I have actually redrawn this, which is why it looked a little bit different to what I was just showing you. Here was the original one, and I didn't like this video. It took me 6 hours to do this in total, including editing and everything, but I scrapped it because I think it looked a bit lazy, and the tutorial wasn't very informative. So I've scrapped that one. I retraced over my drawing that I just did, so it's pretty much identical. I did use line variations to get some of these areas. It's not the best drawing in the world, but it's just a guide to help us color. So yeah, I'm going to be showing you how to draw shadows. Now I should mention that I actually found a tutorial inside an old Dragon Ball Z book that I have. Now I'll post it up on screen so you guys can see exactly what it is, and I figured it would be a great tutorial to show you guys. Now you guys can pick up this book if you want. I don't know if it's still available, but I think it's a bit easier for an artist to explain the tutorials rather than just picking up the book, opening it, and trying to understand it. So I'm just going to break it down for you and hopefully help you guys understand. So first things first, we want to draw the character we've got here in his simplest form, because we need to understand the basic objects that make up each area section of his body. So we're going to start with the head. Now I will time skip this, but first things first, I'm going to do the head in real time just so you guys can get an idea of what I'm doing here. Now hopefully this paper doesn't slide everywhere because it's not actually attached to the sheet. So first things first, I'll do the circle for the head. So actually let's bring it a bit closer. Nothing wrong with being a bit closer there. So we do a circle for the head. Now I'm going to do this quite light, and we're going to do a sort of little triangle thing that comes around for the underneath of the face, leading up towards where the ear is going to be. And in this section right here will be the ear. In fact, it needs to drop a little bit lower. Oh, I suck. So we're going to just draw this circle in here. This right here is the ear. Around here will signify sort of where the nose will be, and this entire shape here is the overall head. Now down here is going to be the cheek area, and a good thing to do is to cut this object down the center line of the character. So this is what we would call, I guess, the action line or something, down the center of the character. Moving on to the neck itself, the neck will slightly come out a little bit, go around where the ear is, just over here. Bring that over there, just over here, and we just get this sort of like collar effect around our character here. So as you can see, we now have 3 basic shapes. You have a basic shape here, well 4. One for here, one for here, one for here, and one for here. Then you move on to doing the body. Now I'm going to start time skipping here, but I just wanted to give you guys a general idea of exactly what I'm doing. And it's not going to be the neatest thing. It's not going to match up 100%, but it's just an idea to give you guys an example of how we do this when we draw our characters. So I'm going to quickly time skip this and show you guys exactly what I'm doing. And then at the end, I will explain what's going on and then start doing some shading. Okay, here we go. Okay guys, so as you can see right here, we have our base model for Goku. Now what I've done here is just separate each section into, like the key sections, into separate areas. So we have the chest area right here, the abdominal area, the groin area, elbow, shoulder, bicep, tricep, upper arm, forearm, these areas like this. And these are going to be the foundations to giving us our character's shadows. So from here, we need to figure out our light source. So our light source is going to be coming from up the top over here, coming straight down onto the character as is in the book, which makes it easier for me to explain to you guys. Now, the shadow technique I'm going to be using here is a blended shadow technique, just showing you the realistic way of shading on objects. Now, this will not translate to the character himself, but I will be showing you how to turn the realistic shadows into the cell shading that we have with Goku, but it just works the same way. All you're using here is the reference of the shadows here. So it's very important to learn this first before jumping into doing anything else. So we have our center line going all the way down the character, and that's just important for us, so we need to know that. And we need to work out our sort of center points for our object. So our circle is going to have a sort of center point that comes around here. And when you notice, the light will hit onto this object, the brightest area will be up here, and it will slowly dim. The brighter that light, the darker this side will be, the dimmer this light, the sort of all-round darkness you'll get, a fine blend. So yeah, moving on to this bit up here, I'm just going to shade it in slightly. Now, this isn't going to be the most precise shading you've ever seen. Obviously, I need to cram this into a video, and I don't want this video to be too long. So I'm going to go as quick as I can with this, hopefully give you guys a good instructional guide in a short amount of time. But as you can see here, I'm just shading that area and I'm just leaving it. I mean, we could blend it a little bit, but we don't need to focus too much on blending it. All we need to know is that this area is white, this area is dark. We get our darker pencil and we just do a darker area over here. So as you can see, the further to the edge we go, the darker it gets and the more intense we get over here. So we do that coming all the way around there. The areas where 2 points meet, so we now have two shadows here. We have the natural shadow of this cylinder. So this bottom image down here, we'll have a natural shadow coming around there, which comes about halfway to where the light will start to meet it. However, we now have two objects that are impacting it. We have the ball firstly set on top, so the ball will cast its own shadow underneath this object here, and the ear itself over here will cast its own shadow over here as well. So hopefully you guys can see that clear. So what we do is on this side, we're going to darken this up nicely. And there you go, that's the side of the cheek. Now, for a point of reference, I'm going to put the nose in here just so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. So if I was to drop the nose just in here like this, you should get a more clearer understanding of what we're doing and where we are with the drawing. So shade this area. Now, the nose is a foreign object, and this is important now. We need to know how a foreign object that is placed on top of our base model interacts with the entire object. So we have the natural shadow that goes all the way down, which we've already done. But the foreign object is going to have a shadow that pokes outwards. Now this is why you see me go over my shadings, my drawing, with a white pencil. Because I always do the whites negative, I do them backwards. Because it's just easier. I think it's just easier to do the entire shading first and then do the white after. So what you got here, we got the shadows, we got all of these points in here, but the nose is sticking out. The nose now sticking out means that that nose is going to have a highlight just around here. So this area would be highlighted, and we have a shadow area just in here where it starts to meet onto the face, I guess, and also a shadow cast on the other side of the nose. This would mean that we now have a new highlight just in this area, a very slight one in here, which would be the highlight you get on the cheek here. Now I will reflect these drawings and start going back and forth shortly, but for now I just want to get some of these areas done just to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about before we move on and complicate things. So here you go. That's looking okay. Going down to the neck, we have a natural shadow. Remember again, we need to get that natural shadow coming down from that sun or whatever object is casting light. Maybe Piccolo charging up a special beam cannon or something, I don't know. But we will do the shadow in here like this. There's our natural shadow. But then we have two objects that impact the overall drawing. So we have this muscle, this neck muscle, that will come there. So there's where the neck muscle is. And it also has a point underneath it. Now that we have this new object on top, we have this poking out, which means this area here will be highlighted. And then it will cast a new shadow just on the inside. There we get this new shadow. And underneath this, we get a new shadow as well. So we can blend that new shadow in there. And there is our new shadow. The underneath of this is also under a shadow, and this shadow is cast by this entire object on top, casting the shadow down onto the neck. So all over here, however, we must stop because we have another neck muscle. So the neck muscle is in here, which means right in this area here, will be lighter, this triangle there will be lighter than the surrounding area because it's sticking outwards. We come back in here, let's carry on with our shadow. Wait, we have another object. We now have an Adam's apple. The Adam's apple will be casting its own shadow underneath it. So under that Adam's apple, we get a shadow right in here. But we also have the shadow that continues around this object. So right underneath it, we have that shadow. But the Adam's apple sticking out means that it will be a little bit lighter than the surrounding area. Now, it's up to you to determine how bright you want to go with those highlights. You can keep them the same color as the skin. You can keep them the same color as the shadows. But ensure that the surrounding area is darker than that area to signify that it is sticking out and that it does have a highlight on top of it. So there you go. You get this sort of shadowy effect coming through. Now when we move on to this big torso area here, this entire torso area has a shadow. However, one exception up here. This area, in fact, let me get my sharper pencil. This area right here goes behind that neck. As you can see here, this is the base of our neck. That goes behind the neck, which means none of this area is impacting that back part of this object. So when we do our shadow, keep that in mind and keep that area clear. There you go. So that area stays clear back there. And when we shade as we normally do. So the normal shadow comes around. Bear in mind that this neck is probably casting a shadow across there. So we come around and then suddenly we have this big white highlight in that top right corner of this torso. All of this area, however, is shaded, but this area has a nice shadow up there. But we have this object now. This shoulder is casting its own shadow down here, which means that is going to cover up over here and the bicep. So now we have two shadows on top of each other. So you know what that means? We get our darker pencil and we start going in with the darker pencil into that area like that. Now it only needs to be one tone darker than the surrounding area, so you don't have to go crazy with it. Over here, we have this split in the middle, which signifies our pec muscles. Now, the pec muscles are going to be separated in these two areas, meaning that this one that comes out is going to be casting its own shadow on this object, which means now we have this object reacting as the whole object. So I know that's a bit complicated, but when you split an object in half, you now have a separate one reacting the same way as the entire one. So for example, if I was to have this circle here and then I put another circle on top of it, the circle on top of it impacts like that. Does that just explode in my house? Never mind. So when we start doing this shadow over here, we do our natural shadow that we have. So the natural shadow of this entire object comes around here like this, but then it has to stop on that point. It cannot now continue because this object is now its own object, meaning that object has its own shadow that goes around the same way. So I hope that makes it a little bit clearer by adding two shadows like this. You can now see that this object is now its own object, and where points meet, so down here, we go right away over here. This bit is nice and dark. That's okay. And where these 2 points meet, where they overlap, we make a really nice dark area there. And of course, the right side is casting a large shadow on top of the left side. Now, with this entire shadow that we've got casted that we did here, this entire half shadow over here, in fact, I want to blend this in a little bit because it looks a bit sloppy. But that is essentially how you would do cell shading. You do it as if you're doing a pencil color and you do it sloppy. That will give you where your cell shading will be. So I just sort of gave it away there where we would do them. So this area is going to be cast in a shadow a little bit here, but because this bit is sticking out, I can give myself a highlight just here of this light reflecting, or at least make it lighter than the surrounding area. So it doesn't have to be white, but it can be lighter than the surrounding area. When we come over here, the same thing applies. This area is going to be the brightest area, but we can have a highlight coming across a little bit in here. Now moving on to this, we're just going to blend this in a little bit more. And as you can see, it follows the entire construct of that drawing, and it comes back around because of that big object that we're working with has a natural shadow around here. We come around like that, and there you go. So the bottom of this, same thing applies where these areas pinch. So in this area here will be a darker shadow right in that deep area there. Will be a darker shadow that overlaps both of the areas and goes around. Now, regarding this section here, it's entirely up to you how you do this. The natural shadow object would go around like this. As you're seeing me do just here, this is the natural shadow of that object. However, some people like to do this, and I personally like to do this as well. I like to separate this area. So let's do a harsher shadow right here. I like to separate this area with a harsher shadow and leave this section just outside a little bit lighter, just signifying the light bouncing off of something or coming around the back. It's entirely up to you if you do that. Obviously, it would look better than that if you did it properly. You wouldn't have this bit shaded. But that's just a little thing that you can keep in mind if you want to do that. It's entirely up to you. And there is the natural shadow of those objects. In fact, we can go a little bit darker around this chest area just over here. Now going on to the shoulders themselves. The shoulders again are balls. So what we do, we react the same way as we do with any ball object, and we shade them exactly the same way. We repeat this process with the cylinders that we have here and here. It's the exact same process. We do the same thing. So I think this part of the tutorial is done, and I'm going to move on to showing you exactly how we do this and move this onto Goku himself. So hopefully you guys look forward to that and will enjoy that part. Let's get on with it right now. Okay guys, so I have finished drawing the model over here and it looks pretty good. All of the shadows are accurate and you're probably wondering what the hell is this line down the middle and why does Goku look different? Well, it was bugging me. The face has been annoying me. I know I wasn't going to take this serious as in the drawing of Goku, but the face was annoying me, so I just basically retraced over what I did again and I redrew Goku's face in a way that I think is a little bit more fitting. So hopefully that's okay and we can begin, even though there is a line down the middle. Hopefully it doesn't distract too much. So coloring the skin tones, I'm going to be using a blush and dusky pink. I'm just going to be using two colors here. I'm not going to go over the top. I'm going to use two colors and show you the simplistic way of doing this. And we're going to work on moving this drawing onto this. Now I'm going to do this very basic. I'm not going to put too many details and other things that I may do in some of my own drawings. That's my style. This is not my style that I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to be doing the Dragon Ball Z style. So to do that, it's up to you to decide what you want to do, whether you want to have a blush as the base for the highlights or to use a white. Now I'm going to just use the blush for now. Usually I would use the white, but I'm just going to use the blush for now. So what we'll do is just quickly coat the entire skin area using the blush, and I haven't given this much time to dry, so hopefully we don't get too much bleeding with that ink. But yeah, I'm going to quickly go over this entire skin with the blush and I'll be back with you in a moment. Okay guys, so I'm going to use my dusky pink now. I hope I said it was dusky pink. That is the color I'm using here, not dusky rose. I do get those two confused with each other quite often, although they're very different colors. In fact, dusky rose is right here. It's quite different. So, using the dusky pink, I'm going to be going over this shadowy area, and I'm going to be aware of that highlight we mentioned over here. We have a slight highlight in this area, so we will just dodge a little bit and leave ourselves a little highlight just in there, going around it and going halfway down the face in the exact same way that we left over here. As you can see, we're just blocking it off and we're going down this face, bringing it around, and then at the bottom of the head we'll curve a shadow underneath, and the shadow will go just underneath there like that. We're going to come up higher and start doing the rest of these shadows going up here. So as we already know, this entire area is shaded based on our sketch around here. We go underneath the eye. Now, it's entirely up to you. If you go under the eye, the more detail you put underneath those eyes, the more intense the look will change. So just be aware of how you do that. The nose, we said that there was a bit of a detail there. So we're going to put the detail in there too. And just around the hair, we do have a bit here. But because the eyebrow has a sort of bump to it, it creates a highlight. So we're going to leave a little bit of that area right there, nice and bright as a highlight. We'll go underneath this eye over here. And we'll create a shadow around the hairs. And there you go. Now, something that Dragon Ball does is they add a sort of triangle highlight or shadow under the eyes. And that's what we're going to do as well. We're going to follow it along this thing. Now it goes against our model, but that is something that Dragonball does, and that's what we're going to do. The shading in the ear, we go around all of these grooves, have shadows, and there you go. The underneath of the ear, right here, we can see that. So we're going to go underneath that ear, put a bit of shadow, maybe just in there overlapping. I went a bit wide with my neck here, I'm sorry about that. But there you go, a bit of shadow underneath there. And then back to this neck. Now we remember what we said about this neck, creating its new shadow. And all of that shadow on the inside there, even around the Adam's apple. Now my Adam's apple isn't actually there, I forgot to put that in. But I'm going to leave a nice skin tone highlight there. It doesn't need to be that bright, but I'm going to make it that bright just for the sake of it. So there's our Adam's apple in there. And just underneath this area, which creates its new shadow, as we remember from there, we can create the shadow coming down here. Now the paper is sliding a little bit. I need to be careful here. So we're just going to do that going around here. And it might curve a little bit and interact with the shadow on the clothing. That's okay. We'll do that right there. So the shadow here, we follow that round, leaving a triangle highlight. Again, I'm going to use the skin tone as that. And around the back, if you remember what we said about the back of this neck, right here, we're going to leave that highlighted because that is visible to the sun or whatever else is causing that light. I'm not going to make that joke again. So, the chest. All of this chest can pretty much go dark. We're going to do that. That's quite nice because it is hidden. You can add a highlight to it if you so please. I will add a highlight, but I'm going to do a dark highlight, not one of these ones. Now, moving over here, we'll do a highlight on this part of the chest as well. And there you go. Very simple, very basic way of doing this. Now, we're going to continue doing it the way we're doing it here, manipulating and copying each thing. But I should mention this bicep and how the arms work. With the arms, we have the natural shadow that goes all the way down. So you can have the natural shadow down, or you can just color that entire thing in one block color, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to color this entire thing in one block color to copy what we've done on our guide. So we're going to color that all in a dark color, and the shadow comes across over here, and it's a little bit more on the inside there like so. It also goes around and up to where the shoulder is, around there, and then the shirt itself casts its own shadow over here like that. And you can continue doing this all the way down, copying everything that you do, going around this area. We'll go around here. The shadow comes around here. We've seen that, but we have a new object in our way. So what we do is just create a highlight for that. So we're going to bring that around there and create a nice highlight for that forearm. Now, if you wanted to add a load of detail, you can do that. It's entirely up to you how much of a highlight and how much sort of shadows you put around the arms and things. But I think that is pretty much it. We don't need to add too many to that. I could actually curve that in a little bit more like that. And we could do a little bit on this side over here. So I'm going to continue doing this for now, copying what I've done on the right hand side and just moving it over. And then I'll get back to you when we're ready to do the shirt. Apologies guys, I forgot to mention that we are going to do a third tone. I'm going to be using the Dusky Pink again as a double layer. Now usually you would wait until this dries completely. I haven't really given it enough time to dry, but you can keep layering on top of that, adding a darker tone each time as you go. Remember that we had the shadow on the other side of the nose there, and we're just going to start producing more shadows underneath these areas, giving them a bit more depth, especially underneath this part of the neck. As we remember here, it was quite darker, so we're just going to be darkening all of this area up like so. Now you can use a black pen for this. It's quite risky, but it does have a beautiful look to it if you do use black, but it's a very risky way to do it. I would exercise caution with using black to do that. But yeah, so I'm just going to continue with this, and I will get back to you when I'm ready to do the shirt. Okay guys, so we are ready to do the shirt, and you'll notice that when I did all of these skin tones, I just went over the layers with the Dusky Pink a few more times. I may do it again later when it's all dried, it depends. You can use other colors if you feel that you need to, maybe a nice brown, a praline, something like that. But for now, this is a good base and it gives us something to work with. So I'm going to be using my pumpkin color for the clothing, and to do this, I'm just going to use the pumpkin for the entire base of the clothing, ignoring any highlights because I will use a white for that later. I like to do the whites in reverse. I like to just get a base down. So once I got the base down, we'll get on with doing some of the shadows. Okay, so let's get the base on. shadows, I'm going to be using a burnt orange. Now I'm using a very heavy color palette here because I'm doing an intense brightness. That may involve me having to go darker and into the skin tones. It would depend how this will look when I do it. I haven't done a test run yet, so I'm not sure how it will go. I would recommend doing test runs before you start coloring, but this is a tutorial on how to shade. So let's just see what happens here. So I'm going to be doing the shadows in the same way that we did the skin tones, looking for these areas, these key areas, and figuring out where the highlights are. So firstly, we know that all of this area over here is going to be quite highlighted, and the shadows are going to fall in this area where the shoulder is. So let's just do the shoulder shadow first, just to get that on. So all we do is get a nice shoulder shadow coming on here like this. It comes in a little bit, so this part over here will be shaded very nicely just in there. So let's bring that up a little bit, and there you go, just down like that, covering all of this area. All the way down we can see the shadow comes around here, but we are using clothing now, so it may change the way this looks. Obviously this is on a nude model. How is it going to look with the clothing? Let's have a quick look at what we can do. All of this bit is going to be sticking out, so there may be a bit more light on there. You know what, we don't need to do too much shadows there. Move on down to the bottom. We know that the bottom is going to be heavily shadowed. This is underneath everything, so we can see that down here, and it's also got folds, which means it's going to have some intense shading. We may have to use a darker color for that area. Coming up here, we get a shade that comes around. We've got a shade in the middle, but we also have a groove of the clothing that goes up here. So coming around like this, and there you go. It comes across a little bit, and it moves back onto this area over here. Now, sorry if my hand is in the way for most of this, but as you can see, we're still following that shadow line all the way up. And I got a bit of a squeak to this pen because it is running low on ink. Yeah, but yeah, so all of this area is following that line, and it actually kind of meets chest shadow, so that's pretty good. And there you go, we can just color that entire half in a nice deep color. So let's do that right now. So guys, now that we've done that, we can look at our drawing and assess it. Now I must remind you guys that I am only using these color palettes to show you where the shadows go. This isn't so much meant to be a serious drawing. This is to use colors that are very intense that show you where the shadows lie. That's why I'm using this palette right here. This isn't the palette that I use when I do my normal drawings. Now I'm going to be using a saddle brown right here just to show you those deep shadows. So we have shadows on shadows here. Because we have clothing involved, and we also have these deep areas that we haven't targeted right now, the clothing is going to be creating some deeper shadows on top of these shadows. So look for where clothing overlaps somewhere, and that is usually where you're going to find a deep shadow. An example of that will be in this corner right here. We will have a deep shadow in here, as well as a deep shadow down here, because we have the sides overlapping and coming across and causing some deep shadows in there. When we move over to here, we have a deep shadow underneath here. We actually have a very deep shadow under this area, because it's a very dark area naturally, but we also have these two folds that are crossing over and creating more shadows in there. So it's a very deep tone. Coming over here, we also have another one over here. Now, this is entirely up to you whether you do this one or not. I like to do it. I know on some references it doesn't show it, but I like to do that one over there. And we should have one somewhere on this side over here. Now, with that being said, that's all done. We can add another one just in here if you so please. And there are some that you can do like down here and so on and so forth, but I'm not going to include those just yet. I think we're okay with that. I'm going to move on to doing the blues right now. So I'm going to be using a sky blue for this. And these are pretty accurate color palette actually, so this isn't too bad. You might get an accurate one here. And we're just going to color all of this in. And once we've got this all colored in, I will show you the midtones we use, and the same thing applies. We do the exact same thing that we're doing with the orange. It doesn't really necessarily need me to do it in real time, but I will do it in real time just for you guys, and hopefully help you guys out with that. And anyone with a keen eye, you're probably wondering, why did I leave these areas down here light like I did here? Well, that's because he's actually away from his body. Those arms are dangling down the side of his body, and they're not actually covered by the torso. They're actually behind the torso, and some of the light will bounce off of the clothing and reflect back onto his skin. So that is why his skin is lighter on the inside there, rather than being darker, being that it is close to the clothing. So here you go. We have the blues down. Now, I'm not going to wait for it to dry. There's no real reason for me to do it just yet. And all I'm going to do is shade all of this area in, leaving ourselves the top layer quite light in the same way that we did with the chest. If you notice the chest, and we're sort of following that around and mimicking what we did with the chest. Coming down here, we got the same thing. This bit of clothing is on top. Just establish what part of the clothing and where the grooves are that are on top. And there you go. You get an area like this. And there you go. You can add a little bit of a shadow there. And that is how you do that. You can go in with a deeper color if you want. I can't do it right now because it does need to dry a little bit. I can't just throw a deep color on there just yet. But a deeper color would just go in those small areas down around here. And also at the bottom down there would be a deep color down there. So hopefully this was visible. And hopefully you guys could see everything that I was doing there. And it was useful. If you found this tutorial useful, I will finish it off right now. Just finish this drawing quickly. And yeah, if you did find this tutorial useful, then please leave me a like. Let me know in the comments down below what you would like to see me cover in the future. And I do apologize for the format of this video. I know it was a little bit all over the place and me stopping and starting and redoing things. I just wanted to give you guys a good tutorial. You know, I have spent, and I'm not going to lie here, I spent 6 hours on the first video, 4 hours on the second video, and then this one I began, obviously, and I had to restart doing another Goku. So it has taken me a very long time to get this video sorted. Hopefully this is a result that you guys wanted, and hopefully you find it useful. So I'm ADC Art Attack, and thank you all for watching. I apologize for the lengthy video. I will see you next time. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.